Have you ever wondered if you're really walking with God or if you're just going through the motions? That question is actually at the heart of the book of First John and why I'm so excited about this new Bible study. Hi, I'm Sandy from the creatorsclassroom.com, Growing in Joy Women's Bible Study Group, She Finds Hope, and Christian Women Loving Bible Study, all on Facebook. If this is the first time that you've done a study with me, I always have a downloadable PDF that is very helpful, and the study is also online. But you can get the link for the PDF in the comments. Before we really dig into First John, I want to spend some time explaining how we're going to study this book, because the method shapes what we notice and sometimes what we miss. A lot of frustration in Bible study doesn't come from the Bible itself, but from rushing past the text too quickly. So today we're going to slow down. There are two common approaches to Bible study: deductive and inductive. Deductive Bible study usually starts with a conclusion. You begin with a topic, a belief, or a lesson that you already expect to find, something like love, assurance, or obedience, and then you read the Bible to support that idea. That approach is very common and it can be useful at times, but the danger is that we can unintentionally read our own assumptions into the text instead of allowing the text to speak for itself. Inductive Bible study, on the other hand, works in the opposite direction. It starts by asking questions. We observe what the text actually says before we decide what it means or how it applies to our lives. The goal is discovery. Inductive study usually follows three steps: observation, interpretation, and application. But everything rises and falls on that first step, observation. That is why for week 1, we're starting by reading the entire book of First John. It's only 5 chapters, but reading it all at once helps you hear John's voice, notice patterns you might miss if you jump straight into a verse-by-verse study. You'll start noticing repeated words, repeated ideas, and repeated concerns. You'll sense what John emphasizes and what he keeps circling back to. At this stage, you're not trying to understand everything. You're not outlining. You're not answering every question. You're simply becoming familiar with the letter as a whole. Think of it like meeting someone new. You listen first before drawing conclusions. After reading the book, we begin the first step of inductive study, which is observation. Observation asks very basic but very important questions such as, who wrote this? Who was it written to? What words or ideas are repeated? What stands out? So today we're mainly focusing on the author and the audience. John makes it clear from the opening of the letter that he is writing as an eyewitness. He speaks of hearing Jesus, seeing him, and touching him. This is not secondhand information. This is someone who walked closely with Christ and is now writing with pastoral concern for believers. That matters because First John isn't written to argue theology. It's written to shepherd people, just like you and I. John is addressing confusion, insecurity, and distorted teaching that was affecting real believers. As we move into chapter 2, John becomes more specific about who he's addressing. He speaks about 3 groups: little children, young men, and fathers. At first glance, it's easy to assume he's simply talking about age groups. But when we slow down and observe the language more carefully, we begin to see that John is describing stages of spiritual maturity, not spiritual age or spiritual value. That's where study tools come in. To help us understand what John means by these terms, we're going to be using the Blue Letter Bible, which is an online free resource. And when you open the passage in Blue Letter Bible, you can click on Tools next to that verse and then select Interlineary. This shows you the original Greek words behind the English translation. And then when you click on a word, you'll see its strong number and definition. The Strong's definitions don't give you a sermon. They help you see how a word was commonly used and what kind of meaning it carried to its original audience. For example, when John refers to little children, he's not belittling anyone. When he refers to young men or fathers, he's not ranking believers. He's describing spiritual development, growth that happens over time through walking with God. And noticing that comes from observation, not assumption. This step is important because many of us struggle with comparison in our faith. The term little children was something used by teachers to refer fondly of their students. But we sometimes compare ourselves. We think we should be further along, or we feel ashamed that we're not where someone else seems to be, or we assume maturity always looks the same. John's language reminds us that growth happens in stages and that all stages are part of the Christian life. But before we apply that truth, we simply observe it. As you look at these three groups and their meanings, I want you to pause and honestly ask yourself, which group do I identify with the most right now in my life, and why? Not where you think you should be, not where you think you were 5 years ago, not where someone else appears to be, just where you are today. This isn't about labeling yourself permanently. It's about awareness because healthy growth begins with honesty. This kind of slow, careful observation sets the foundation for everything else we will do in this study. In the next lesson, we'll build on this by noticing repeated words and themes throughout 1 John. Words like light, truth, love, and knowing. And we'll begin to see how they shape John's entire message. But for now, stay in observation, read, notice, reflect, and let the text speak before you try to answer every question. I hope you'll come back for week 2 of 1 John. There's a lot of really great things that we will be learning that will help us all in our Christian walk. And I also ask that you do the same thing that you do with all other social media: like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.